Thank you so much for joining us today, Ted.
Oh, happy to be here, Lynn Marie. When I saw that we had Josh as a mutual friend, I knew I had to meet you, and yeah, just excited to be here to talk about strategic quitting.
I love that. I think the whole anybody who's a friend of Josh Trent is a friend of mine is a great philosophy for life. He's such a quality guy who knows quality people. And so I love that you guys just finally serendipitously ran into each other for the first time in person in Thailand. I love how the universe works. Like if you ever not trusting the universe, just seeing that on Instagram pop up, I was like, nope, the universe has it. It knows what's going
Absolutely.
on.
Absolutely. It was incredible. And meeting him in person just gives me a whole new appreciation for him, and definitely anyone who's a friend of Josh's is a friend of mine for sure.
I love this. Half of Quit Happens is just like a Josh Trent Wellness Force Appreciation Society, but that's cool with me.
Absolutely.
He's a fantastic person. We
Absolutely.
love you, Josh. So Ted and I officially met right now, but we've known each other through the Facebook and Podsphere a little bit, but we just got acquainted and had a long chat, and I learned some very cool, similar things about Ted. I don't know if you heard me say, Ted, I do capoeira, you do jujitsu, so we're both martial artists, and there's many, many other things. But Ted, you will have heard in the intro, is a celebrity trainer, and he's worked with many people, and so he has seen what quits have benefited his clients, and he would like to share some of those with us today. So Ted, take it away. What have your clients benefited from in the strategic quitting realm?
Yeah, well, there's so many things I'd love to talk about with strategic quitting because I love this idea. So many of us, especially in the West, especially in America, we think we need to try harder and it's not working, but we need to go harder. And it's because we haven't done it hard enough or long enough or suffered enough. And I don't like that idea. I've never liked that idea. But as I became a coach and coached so many people on how to get better results with nutrition, with fitness, with their lifestyle, their sleep, their stress management, I've also seen that it's not effective. So, in the terms of, or in the areas of nutrition and fitness, for example, people, and I'm talking about my clients here, people who end up hiring me, they have been doing so many different types of diets, the 5-2 diet. And I'm thinking, I'm going to name things off from actual success stories here. So I had a client, Tim. He's from the UK, 57 years old, and he was in the obese range of body fat, right? And he had been trying different things like the 5-2 diet, which is a form of intermittent fasting. He was trying to just avoid eating junk food. He was trying all these different things and he was exercising, but he wasn't getting consistent results. And the thing that I want you to quit now is if you are doing something and it's not giving you consistent results, and by consistent results, if you're talking about fat loss, you should be seeing some type of improvement every week. If you're talking about gaining muscle or getting in better shape cardiovascularly or building your strength, you should see some improvement every single week, unless you're working at the limit of your genetic potential, which there's probably not one person on listening to this or on this call, that means you and I, right, who are at the limit of our genetic potential, unless you have a goal, unless you're competing in the Olympics, or unless you're a professional athlete who's still competing, is still playing your sport. You're not, unless you're playing at that level. If you have kids, if you have a job, you're not playing at that level. You're not maxed out with your genetic potential. So I think it's really important that we get rid of this idea that we need to work harder, work longer on with fitness, and find the things that actually work and give consistent results that are not easy, but at least they give you a payoff. And that really comes down, we can talk about that, but it really comes down to fitting it into your lifestyle. It really comes down to when I write programs for clients, for example, I don't say, hey, you're going to do this. Hey, you're going to eat like this. I ask them dozens of questions on what they like to do, what they like to eat, what exercises do they like. And I design it. That's really the secret of my success with my programs, is they come out with a program that's designed for them. And I'm saying that, yes, it sounds like I'm plugging my services, but you can do that on your own. You don't need me to do that. Of course, I got maybe a few more years of experience, but anyone can do that, right? Anyone can do that. So just make sure that you're doing something. Quit things that you hate doing in nutrition and fitness, and definitely quit things that are not serving you, meaning they're not giving you results.
And what kind of things have fallen in there? Like you were talking about the 5-2, which is a version of intermittent fasting, which is one of the things I have recently quit because I think for a lot of people, and I hope this isn't blasphemous to all the intermittent fasting like gurus out there, but I've talked to a lot of people that it works for a period of time and then it stops working. And sometimes that quit is hard because, for example, right now it's all the rage. And even women I see touting, oh, you should be doing intermittent fasting. And I'm thinking to myself, like, am I bad for having failed intermittent fasting? But no, it's the fact that, again, like you said, some things work for you for a period and some things may stop working. And then you have to reevaluate, like, if they're no longer giving me results, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we lost connection. Oh, you're still there. Okay. Can you talk about any other types of things that you've worked out with your trainers or with your trainees that might have been maybe quit behind the quit? Like they're having difficulties in some area of health or fitness, and you realize it's come down to some limiting belief or mindset that they had to quit first to be able to make that other change.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing that I wanted to follow up with after you said what you
Yeah.
just said about the intermittent fasting and it being so popular, the first thing that popped up is that so many people, they're finding their identity in the group. And you and I, we've even talked about loneliness. And there's a massive issue with loneliness and social isolation, and we're looking for places where we can connect with others and be part of a group. And sometimes people find that in nutrition approaches or fitness approaches. For example, CrossFit. If you've ever talked to someone who does CrossFit, you'll know in the first 2 minutes, right? Because they have to tell you. In fact,
Yes.
I'm no longer single, but when I went on a date with this girl. She's like, "Oh, I love that you're in fitness. I love that you're all about fitness." And I've been doing this for 20 years, or at the time, I guess, more like 15, or a long time. It's been my life. It's been the only profession I've ever known, my only career. And she was like, I just think it's so awesome that you're in fitness because I do CrossFit. And then we spent the whole date. She was just talking about CrossFit, and I had to get out of there. You know, I had to get out of there. She was talking about how they pick out the outfits, but the night before, just in case someone takes the photo of them in the group, put it up on the head, like the main website. And I'm saying that not because I think CrossFit's a bad thing, but if you're finding that you're getting injured in CrossFit, and you're getting hurt and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can keep this up. My body's breaking down, but I can't let my friends down, my CrossFit friends down. Like, who are you going to be if you quit CrossFit and you don't have that group to hang out with? And for me, I would say that if they don't want to hang out with you if you stop doing it, they're not your friends they're not your real friends to begin with. But it happens even, that's just one example. It happens even more dogmatically in like the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting world. People are so sold on it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with keto especially if you're doing it the right way and you're getting your labs taken and your blood levels are fine with the triglycerides and the cholesterol levels and all that. But if you're doing it and let's say it's not serving you because you're just dying to eat some fruit, right? Or you're missing like potatoes or whatever it is, but you're feeling like you have to be part of this group because the reason behind it is that you feel like you don't have connections. You want to go make real connections. And I think it's a good thing to be in a group where you're all part of the same thing, but instead of maybe a diet or a nutrition approach, maybe find something that with a little bit more of a purpose, right? More of a purpose, more of a like people who are trying to raise the consciousness of others, or, just find something. That's what I would say is that's the first thing that comes to mind, where I see all these raging arguments online about intermittent fasting or ketogenic versus low carb versus low fat. And it's just, I never participate in them. I delete people who get into those types of talks, because it's like we're so part of that group identity when we behave that way, that we're not even thinking for ourselves. We're just defending basically our attachment to this idea and the group, because those are all your friends. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it can turn toxic. And that's what I think we're seeing a lot of, is this toxic tribalism in so many different areas. And once it turns toxic and you're spending your time arguing online, defending your diet or your political viewpoint or anything like that, or CrossFit, it's just that's time that could be better spent doing other things, taking care of your kids, or actually practicing the nutrition things that you're supposed to, that you're not, because you're too busy, participating in these group arguments. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of what keeps people from quitting so many things is having this identity ingrained along, and it's the job. It can be the relationship. Okay, my identity is as a spouse, as a wife, as a husband, or my identity is as a CrossFitter. Or for me, I quit capoeira. I quit formally training, but I was a capoeirista, and capoeirista till I die. What are you going to be when you're not that thing anymore? And that's why Tim Ferriss has talked about the concept. And I always quote Tim. I'm sure somebody else maybe said it before him, but he always talks about diversification of identity, so that when you leave CrossFit,
I like that.
yeah, you still have other friends. And like you said, on two different levels, like, yes, it's best to have friends that are going to remember you even if you don't show up for CrossFit, but there are a lot of social events that, okay, we're all hanging out at CrossFit, let's go out for a drink after. Maybe you're just not going to get invited to those because you're not physically there, but you're not going to be alone or have this loneliness thing happen, because you still have deep connections with people in that group. And I think that was, to your point, is like, find people that you have deep connections with in many different groups, so that if one of your identity goes away, and even they just, that friendship kind of dissolves a little bit just because of lack of proximity, then you still have these other options.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a fan of Tim's. I have not heard him use that term before, but I like it a lot. And I got it immediately as you said that. I knew exactly what you were talking about. And it's something that I fell into a trap with when I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and competing, and it was like such a huge part of my life, but I was getting injured all the time. So I'm not being judgmental when I say this. This is something that I personally suffered from as well. And what happens is that you get super depressed when you lose it, when you lose that group connection, or when you lose that thing that you do. And it's like, who am I if I'm not that? Who am I if I'm not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner? Yeah. And I have a brown belt with two stripes on it. And I recently came back, actually, but it was really hard to stop, to quit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But it was taking so much out of my energy to create my business. It was taking so much of my energy in the form of beating up my body. I got out of shape doing it, because I wasn't doing enough to balance recovery, because that was back before recovery and the Oura Ring and all these other great gadgets. I know, right?
Oro, just put it up there, Ted, and Oro will like.
Aura.
I tag them every time, and I get a little heart. But yeah, before recovery was a big thing.
Yeah. And what we're finding out is that more exercise or harder exercise or hard training in sports or martial arts or whatever is not the key. It's the right amount with the right amount of recovery. And that was before all this stuff came out, before Joel Jameson and Alex Viada and all these other people who are really preaching this. Right before, it was all just hard training. And what are you doing when you're not doing your intense martial arts training? Well, you're doing high intensity interval training, and then you're lifting heavy weights in the 1 to 5 rep range to keep up that strength. and just got really beat up by it and had to quit it all and find my way back, right? And I said find myself. It was kind of an accident that I said that, but it was actually appropriate too, because I had to find out, like, who am I without all this stuff, and how can I get myself back in shape without destroying my joints so that I can't even walk by the time that I'm 70.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so right there with you. When you're training other clients and they've gotten to a point where they may be reaching their edge where, whatever they're doing starts to get too much. Besides injury, are there any other signs or symptoms that tend to be the signal to you that maybe they need to back down a little bit?
Other than injury, yeah, I ask them, hey, are you getting bored of this routine? It's one of the first questions I ask. Are you getting bored of doing this? And I want you to be honest with me, because I wrote the program, and I know people are like, no, I'm not bored. You wrote this program and it's great and you're great. No, I'm like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about my feelings or anything else. Be 100% honest with me, because boredom is a sign that because once you're bored, and I think this is a really important point, and this goes with nutrition approaches as well. If I put someone on a particular nutrition approach, and let's say it's getting them great results, they're losing a pound or two a week, and they're just so happy, but it's getting to the point where, like, okay, well, I know I'm not supposed to have, and this is just an example, it's not a real example, but just I think it's easy. You're supposed to be eating plain yogurt, but then you start putting some raisins in the yogurt, or cranberries if you like, right? And then you start putting raisins and cranberries and then some honey on top of it. And at first it's just a little teaspoon of honey, but then you start putting maybe more of a tablespoon of honey. And there's this behavior change away from what you're supposed to be doing. Now, some coaches would say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You're sabotaging yourself. You need to try harder. And I don't do that. What I say is, this person has been trying hard. They've been doing well. They've been getting great results. They're not feeling it. They need a break. So we need to quit that plan. To stay with the theme of the show, we need to quit that plan for a while to give them a break. We need to change their workout routine, because now they're starting to miss workouts or starting to not perform as well during the workouts, or whatever it may show up as. We need to quit that and change to something else. And again, that goes back to especially that mentality in American culture, where we just have to keep trying there's a lot of parallels between this and say even martial arts, which I mentioned to you before. Not to go down this tangent too much, but one of the things that you learn is that you can't always just go after something and get it. You've got to work around. You've got to be open. You've got to be flexible, because you may be going for an arm bar or a chokehold or a takedown, and it's just not happening. In fact, one of the things that you need to be able to do is transition very quickly and have combinations of approaches. And I think that is true in life. You need to adapt quickly and change quickly, and not get too attached to trying something and it's not working, and you're so attached to it and you don't want to let it go. You need to actually be able to let go like that. You need to change quickly and be flexible and be able to do it without that pain, right? When you release the attachment.
Ooh, there's so many good gems in there. I love talking about quitting this forcing of things. Like you were talking
Yeah.
about with jujitsu, almost anywhere in life, when you come in, just the same thing is like, okay, I'm coming up against this roadblock in my diet, in my nutrition, and I'm just going to keep fighting through it. That isn't what serves us. And I think luckily, like you said, with increased recovery or emphasis and just overall society waking up to like no pain, no gain is not the mantra anymore. Like that's great for a few days of muscle building, and then at some point that pain is going to mean you can't go to the gym anymore. And why are you doing something totally counterproductive to your body style or your DNA? I mean, thank God we now have like the ability to look into our own DNA and know like, oh, I really shouldn't be doing this type. Or I failed the aforementioned ketogenic diet. I was doing it wrong. I continue to always say that asterisk. I failed it, but I was also doing it wrong. But then right afterward, I had my DNA test analyzed, and it was like, oh, you're supposed to have a ton of carbs, Polish girl. Like, this is not for you. So maybe stop forcing these things and look for routes that, like you said, have more ease, because that's probably the universe like gently nudging you in this direction anyway. Like, it's not your job to just be fighting for everything all the time.
Absolutely. And I think there's some, we have like this nobility attached, this idea of nobility attached to the struggle. But personally, I'm lazy, and I don't like to work any harder than I need to. I mean, I work very hard for my clients, but I don't work any harder than I need to, right? I want to have a fun, good life, you know? And that approach, it doesn't work, is the most important part. So were you going to say something?
Oh, no, no, no. I like that you brought that up about being lazy, because I think a lot of people have this idea that people like yourself and myself, these high achievers, we're not lazy. No, what we are is efficient with our choices in our environment. Like you were talking about with your clients, you don't just say, here's what you're going to eat. You say, hey, here's 12,000 questions so I can figure out what works best for you. I mean, I don't cook. If I had to cook, I would starve or be eating Doritos 24/7. Like, I would not be a fit person. And so anybody who comes to me and says this diet plan requires that you do a bunch of cooking, I am going to fail, and I'm going to quit that diet, and not strategically. I'm going to give up on that diet. So the onus is on us to say like, hey, this is who I know I am. And that takes a lot of self-reflection to be like, hey, I know I'm lazy. Or I know that if this thing that I need is 4 feet away from me, I won't go get it. But if it's 2 feet away, I can probably reach it. And I'm going to use this, like the roll flex or some, other little piece of recovery equipment, just to set your environment up so that you're ready for, that the chance of you following through on things is a lot higher.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like that you called me out on the laziness thing, because it would be hard to call someone like me or you lazy. But I say that so that people relate to that word. And but absolutely, what it is that I'm very efficient, and I like to put in the work ahead of time so that I have to do work less later. For example, like what you said about the setting up your environment. I only stay in places that have a gym, for example, because I won't say, oh, well, I got a really good deal on this place and it's really cool, but the gym is like, it's a 10-minute drive somewhere else. I'm not going to go. Now, I do most of my calisthenics training in the room, but I do my cardiorespiratory training using machines, and I have a very specific regimen that I use to keep me in shape, to do the things that I like to do. Like I mentioned, I'm back doing martial arts again, and I know that if I don't stay in a place with a gym where I walk down and go work out in the same building, I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Or if I do it, it's going to be once in a while. So I don't put myself in that situation or get mad at myself and say, oh, you just need to try harder to get that, take that 10-minute drive. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to force it. And so I hope that example gives some perspective about what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, I call myself lazy all the time, and I love that you brought it up, because it's not just that we want efficiency. We just preserve our energy for the important things. And I don't want to spend my energy driving to a gym. I mean, I live in North Park, San Diego, where I walk to a gym that's a block and a half away. And everybody's like, why do you have to live in North Park? I'm like, because I don't want to get in a car and have to go find parking. Like the mental and physical energy, right, of driving and finding parking. Like you were talking earlier about having limited amounts of energy and what you do with it during the day. And like, okay, jujitsu was taking up a lot of the energy I should have been putting into my business. Well, that's the same thing with your daily routine. Like, why do I not cook? Because cooking would require all the energy that I have to put into like figuring out the best hashtags for my Instagram post for the day. Like there's a finite amount of energy, right? Like once a day I'm like, okay, we got to do this Instagram post. All right, allhashtags.com. And like if I had to spend that time cooking, there's just only so much energy bandwidth in the world. And so I think those of us who call ourselves lazy, we're just really in tune to the fact that we don't want to have these energy seepages in places that are not fruitful.
Yeah, that's so well put. And what I like to say is that if you want to perform like a superhuman, the people who you see are like, how are they doing all that? How are they staying in shape and taking care of their kids and having a successful business? And I'm here, I'm working my ass off. I'm hardly sleeping. I don't have any time to exercise. I don't have time to eat the way that they're eating. And the key is that if you want to be superhuman, you've got to realize that you're only human, and you've got to understand your limitations. And once you start to understand your limitations, one, as a human being, and then two, your unique limitations, like me, I'm not taking that 10-minute drive. Like, it's got to be within walking distance. The gym's got to be in walking distance to where I'm at. Once you realize that, and you construct your environment, you set yourself up accordingly, things just flow effortlessly. And that's what you want. There's no need for any more. Life is going to have enough struggle in it. You don't need to add to it. There's no need for that.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. So there was another quit that you talked about when we were chatting beforehand. And I'm wondering if it relates back to some things that you've seen in your clients as well, or if it's totally separate. But either way, you were talking about advising people to quit. I have written down quit second guessing themselves, but I think you said something like quit not believing in themselves.
Yeah, I said quit not having faith. And I know that's a double negative there,
But that
but
means
I
you're playing the
believe.
quitting game really well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, am I? All right.
Yes,
Cool.
anybody who can
I'll
turn
take
anything
it.
around into a quit, no matter how many negatives it revolves, there we go.
You
Sorry,
have to
continue.
stop. You have to quit not stopping. Yeah.
Right, exactly. You get the
I'll have
most
to get
points.
back to you. Yeah, I'll try to think of a really crazy one to get back to
I
you.
love it.
But yeah, quit not having faith in yourself. And why I say that is I've been through a lot in my life. We didn't get a chance to get into my background, but I've had a lot of family tragedies. I lost my mother when I was 14 years old in a car accident. I lost my brother, who is my 9-year-old brother, when I was 19. He was kidnapped and murdered. And I lost my sister, who committed suicide, and when I was 36. So just about 5 years ago. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I've been through a lot of periods in my life where I didn't have faith that things would get better. And I know, I'm using my story, and I don't want people to listen to that and go, oh, I've been through nothing compared to that. I'm using it, and I'm sharing it with you because we all go through similar struggles. We all go through similar struggles. Maybe you're struggling right now because you're American and the political climate has you feeling like things aren't going the way they should be. Or maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's a more personal. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Maybe you're having trouble with your kids. Maybe you're having trouble with your health. Maybe you're having trouble in your career. Whatever it is, you got to have faith that if you're listening to a show like yours, Lynn Marie, and the people who listen to mine and the people who listen to Josh, that you're on the right path and that you're doing the right thing. And of course, that first level is just listening and feeding your mind with positive, for lack of a better term, positive thoughts. And what I like to say is problem solving, right? Developing that problem solving approach to things. So things don't become like, oh, why me? Why is this happening? It's so terrible that this is happening. You want to change from that to saying, well, what can I do here? What can I do that still adds value to my life and others? Or what improves my life and improves the lives of the people that I'm connected to, my family, my friends, coworkers, employees. And that is the key, right? That is the
Yeah.
key. And you got to have faith in yourself. And I see a lot of people, especially in America, not having faith in themselves, right? Especially in Canada, America. Um, I guess the UK, it's a little bit different, although I see a lot of it there as well, from my UK friends. But especially in America and Canada, just really having a hard time. And it feels hopeless. And there's just what we tend to do is we put like, oh, I don't matter. What I do doesn't matter. What Donald Trump does matters. What the Prime Minister of Canada does matters. What Kim Kardashian matters. What who all these icons. But what you're doing when you do that, you disempower yourself. You're giving your power away. Because who are they at the end of the day? They're just people. They're just people. They all sit on the toilet and do their business just like you. They all fight with their partners and they have problems and they don't think they're good enough or smart enough or whatever enough. They all struggle. We're all people. We all have the potential to do amazing things. So quit giving your power away by focusing on these icons. Quit not believing in yourself or quit not having faith in yourself and understand that you're very important. And the only reason that it feels that you're unimportant is because you're not doing the things that really make a difference. That's when you feel like you're not important. Because if you're arguing on Facebook or if you're leaving nasty comments on Instagram or just being part of these unproductive conversations instead of taking the action towards making your life better and having that ripple effect from from what you do affect others around you, and then looking again, going back to what we were talking about, finding that tribe of people who you really connect with, who you have these great relationships with. That's what the world needs more of, right? Because the people who are in the people who are in power, whether they're in power politically or business wise, or if they're a big celebrity, like they're doing their thing, they're stuck, and they're kind of a manifestation of the state of our society, right? How did Kim Kardashian get famous? Nobody can explain it, right? And she's successful and she saw an opportunity and went after it. Great for her. Personally, I would do things a little bit different, but the point is, she wouldn't have been able to do that. Donald Trump wouldn't have been able to get elected without there being an underlying foundation for them to rise up from. And we're all that foundation, right? We're all part of it. So you got to ask yourself, am I doing things that are that feel like I'm disempowering myself? Am I giving my power away? Am I not doing the things that I know I should do? Because I feel like a lot of this angst that people have, it's not even about what they're talking about, right? Because human beings, we're so meta, right? We say it's about one thing, but it's really about a feeling that we're having. We're feeling like we're not mattering or we're not doing enough, or even worse, that we have values and we're not living up to those values, right? And that makes us feel really bad. If I say I value my health, it's like, okay, well, when's the last time you ate some broccoli or spinach or worked out? And it's been several months. That's a problem. And it's not a problem for anyone else. It's not a problem for me. It's a problem for you, because you're living in incongruence. You're living in opposition to what you believe in. And you should quit doing that too. If I can throw that
Yes,
in.
mic drop by Ted. You should quit doing that too. That's what I always say, that my passion in strategic quitting is helping people quit whatever is making them out of alignment with their passions and their purpose. And I'm not sure if Skype is totally. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. We're
You
back.
got out there. We're back. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yay, Skype. But yeah, like let's quit anything that keeps you away from your values. Any, like you were talking about, that kind of that distance. Our mutual buddy Josh Trent says the space between his truth, when he's living his truth, and when he's not, is the space of his suffering. Like between what he knows he should
Wow,
be,
love
what,
that.
yeah, what he knows his truth is, and what he's currently doing. That's the space of his suffering, which I love that phrase. And it brings up something that I wanted to have you touch on before we have to wrap up just a little bit, because you were saying it's one of the anecdotes to loneliness. And as you also just kind of tangentially brought up, I think it would help people realize their power and give themselves more of a sense of being able to contribute to this collective, is the idea of purpose.
Yeah, the idea of purpose. So I became really interested in this when, well, I think I've always been interested in like, what is my purpose? I think we all ask ourselves, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Or, right, what am I going to do with this college education that I'm not passionate about? It was cool while I was studying, but I don't know if I really feel the same way after 4 years of studying it. And I think we're all interested in this idea, but I became really interested in it when I started learning that all these other cultures, these cultures, have had this idea for a long time, and in particular in the West, and in particular in America, we're such a new country, and we've been disconnected from where we come from because we're all indigenous peoples. Right. At one point in time, there were tribes of people in Germania or in, all these different areas of Europe or the UK, all over the place. And we feel like we're not like that. We feel disconnected because we're so far removed. And especially in America, we're such a young country. And what I'm saying here is that the places that still have these unbroken lines of or who still have connection with their culture going back hundreds or thousands of years, and they all have this idea of purpose. And in fact, Dan Buettner, who wrote the book Blue Zones, found that this is one of the keys to longevity. It's one of the things that these people who live, just for people who are listening who haven't heard of the Blue Zones, they're the geographical areas of the world where people disproportionately live to 100 and beyond. So it's not genetics. It's something that they're doing, right? Or it's something in the environment too. And what they found was one of the things they all had in common in these places is they all had a sense of purpose. And it didn't have to be like, I'm going to reform politics, or I'm going to, end world hunger, or I'm going to end war. It could be like, I get up and I make bread for the community, and the community all comes and buys bread from me. And that's the thing that I do to give back to the community. And while that may sound a little strange, or maybe you don't quite relate to it if you're in the technologically advanced modern world, the point is you got to have something that you're passionate about, a purpose. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your job. I would say that I've merged my purpose and my profession together, but you don't have to, right? But the point is you got to have something. And I think a lot of people don't know what that is, right?
Yeah.
They go on this path, this path that, well, I went to school and got good grades. Why do you get good grades? Because you got to get into a good college. And okay, so I got into a good college, and now you get good grades here. Why do you do that? So when you get out, you can get a good job. Well, why do you want a good job? Because you're going to make money. And then what do you do when you make money? Well, now you can afford to buy a house, have a family, and it just goes on. And you're like, well, none of those things feel like my purpose, though, right?
Yes.
They all feel like things that I want to do, but it doesn't feel like my purpose. And I think going into a talk about how to find that is, we don't have the time to do that today, right? But it's something we all need to think about, and we all need to find, right? And even if your purpose changes, it evolves, that's fine. But you gotta get more in touch with that side of yourself. And like I said, so many of us are disconnected from anything like that. We're just acting out of a sense of duty or obligation, or like what I just went through, these patterns that we follow in life that are just kind of set out before us, but it's not, again, not your purpose. And we now know that having a purpose, not only does it show up in all these blue zone cultures, but it also, there's research showing that having a purpose can offset loneliness. So if you don't feel like even if you're surrounded by a lot of people at work, or you have these quote unquote friends that aren't really friends because the talk is also superficial, a purpose can really help you get through that. So it's extremely important. And my purpose, by the way, is to make a big positive impact on people using my story, because my story that I shared, it has a lot more detail that we don't have time to get into that either, but is to take that story and my skills and who I am and make a big positive impact on people's lives, right? I want to empower others. I don't want to be a guru. I don't want to just make a lot of money. I don't want to do any of these things. I want to empower others. And there's nothing like hearing from someone who listened to the podcast or worked with me as a coaching client, or interacted with me in some other way, maybe heard me on your show, Lynn Marie, and said, that I heard your story, I heard what you said, and it really, I started doing things differently after that. And I'll say, yes, that right there, that's my purpose.
Beautiful, my friend. That was lovely. This is a perfect place to wrap up because you exactly have embodied that here on the show. You've given people a lot of permission to quit things throughout their life, health, fitness, mindsets, and then brought it back with the fact that you just need to find a purpose, because it makes all, like you said, it helps with longevity, it helps with loneliness, it just helps you get up in the morning. And I think, like you said, it's great if you can merge that into your profession, but if you don't, I think you're going to find a lot of other areas of your life are going to feel a lot more congruent when they're heading toward one set. You can have many disparate things. You can be a multi-potentialite, but when you wake up and you feel as though there's some greater good and some greater purpose, I think it just helps kind of set guidelines and just gives you a little bit of a path for your journey that I think a lot of us are looking for, because there's so many things to do out in this world today, and it's kind of helpful to be able to hone in on which ones are most in line with your vibration and your passions and your purpose and your values. So thank you for bringing all that to the forefront. Can you please tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, so if you want to hear more about me and listen to some of the interviews or some of my solo episodes that I put out, you can go to legendarylifepodcast.com. That's where you can find everything about the podcast, about me, articles, and all the content that I've been putting out over the years. And if you're really interested in fitness, health and fitness in particular, then I've put together a free masterclass that you can go to legendarylifepodcast.com/free. And if you want to see the things that I use to get amazing results with the people who end up working with me, I share all of that in this free masterclass. So that's legendarylifepodcast.com/free.
Well, thank you, Ted, for being on the podcast and helping me share my passion of destigmatizing quitting with the world. I really appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate it. Can't wait until we get you on my show.
I'm very much looking forward to that. All right, for everybody else out there, until next time, happy quitting.